Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eurofever Garage. As always, we're your hosts, Donovan and Garrett. Today, we are launching the first episode of our Talking Headpiece podcast, not a podcast, the Two-Seater Show. So, on today's episode, we are launching with a oldie but goodie, best picks for a certain price range. Today's price range is $30,000
or under.
We'll get back to that later, but the main premise is $30,000. We've got 5 categories, and there's 3 criteria. They're very loose, but we just wanted to have something to keep us a little bit more realistic. So, in order for the car to be eligible, we said it had to be car enthusiast oriented. It has to be unique or identifiable, no and cars or traffic, and it has to be fairly reliable or won't break the bank because it's not just appreciated. Great example, Volkswagen Phaeton. I don't think either of us have that on our list, but that's a good example of what really wouldn't qualify. Anyways.
I mean, the Phaeton is a great car, but it is traffic. It's a big Passat. It's an incredible car, and I will not hear anyone speak ill of it. But it would be an absolute nightmare to maintain, and it does look like traffic. And it is car enthusiasty, but it does not qualify for this list. Now, if we do a list that's like cars you shouldn't buy but should buy because you're a moron, that would be probably number one. I mean, the W12 would be number one, but we're not doing that for this one. Our categories are, did we already go over categories? Categories are sports car, luxury car, practical/family car. We differ on what that means. Modifiable car, we differ on what that means. And best all-rounder, we differ on what that means. And I'm looking at the list now, and all of mine are so much better that it hurts. Like, the yours are all terrible.
I beg to differ.
I don't know what. The only one number 3 is the only one I like, but we'll get to it. So let's start with sports car. I can't cross my legs so you'll see my feet. So sports car, you want to go first?
Sure. So I really tried to not make these all European, even though our channel's name is literally Eurofever Garage. So I apologize because all of my cars are European. However, I did make sure not to include all BMWs on this list, and I limited myself to only one, and that's for my first choice for the sports car. Now, for $30,000, getting a sports car, at least in BMW land, is pretty dang easy. I mean, you could literally just buy any E46 330, soup that thing up, and call it a day. I think I was really debating between the E46 and the E90, and I ended up with the E90, E92, depending on which is your preference, because of one main thing. It's slightly newer. It's a little bit more luxury oriented. You've got the naturally aspirated V8, and it's such an amazing car. Now, the E46 is definitely my dream car. Like, I would absolutely love to own one of those things, but I think the E90 is a better choice in our list. You can get a pretty decent one under 90,000 miles for $30K on a good day. And that's why I chose the E90, because typically people who are more sports oriented will be going for the coupe. But the E90 gives you just a little bit more practicality. Even though we're doing sports car in particular for this category, I decided to go with the E90.
I wouldn't go for the E90, mainly because of, what is it, the crank bearing?
The rod bearings. Right, but the E46 also had that too, but there's a lot more other issues. Its cooling system wasn't that great.
On the E90?
No, the E46. The E46 also had rod bearing issues.
I mean, that V8 is absolutely sweet, but I just don't, I'm afraid, there's one in my complex's parking lot, and I'm just afraid every time he starts it, because in my mind, it's being lubricated with sandpaper. Yeah. Like, I don't like living in dread when I own a car, and I feel like I would live in dread with an E90.
But I think that's what's really good about that car versus the E46 is that people hold the E46 in such high esteem. If you mess those up, they're coming after you. BMW enthusiasts are coming after you. And they built E90s for days. There's so many E90s and E92s that it's still, you're probably 10 years away before it's even close to
it's a better car. Yeah. It's a better car than but I don't know. If I were to have an M3, it'd probably be an E46.
Right, and broadening that idea of the sports car and why I didn't go with anything else for 30K. I mean, there's just so many choices. It's really dependent on what a sports car is to you.
Well, we were talking, we should have just both picked Corvettes.
Right.
Because, I mean, you
Best bang for the buck.
the absolute best bang for the buck, enormous, probably one of the biggest aftermarket supports. Like it, you just get a Corvette, but everyone has a Corvette, and we're not fathers, and we're not 55 with cargo shorts. But that's why that's one of the most successful sports cars ever. Just like the Miata, it's everything you want and nothing you don't want, and it's reliable, and it does everything right. But it's almost like you need something that doesn't do everything right, but does some things great. Because there's some things that the Corvette doesn't do great, and I think it does more things well than it does things great, versus the thoughts of this, which is things that are done amazing, I think draw you to a car, and then that makes up for all the downfalls. Because the Corvette doesn't have many downfalls, but I wouldn't say it excites me. Maybe a Z06, but
Yeah, and I think we talked about a lot of LS based cars, and it's the same thing with all of them. They're cool from the outside perspective, like you're like, oh look, it's like a Chevy SS or a first gen CTSV, but at the end of the day, it's just another LS engine, and it's just the platform's so explored that like I said, for the criteria, it needs to be somewhat unique, and to have that many cars with an LS engine, I mean, I think that's what makes at least the E90 a little bit more unique, is that there's just not many European V8s that are that exceptional. You know, we'll talk about some AMGs later and a lot of other European cars with V8s, but I think yours is really interesting.
My pick for this is the Jaguar S-Type R, which technically is a Euro V8. Now, the 4.2 it's based on is a Ford engine, but the 4.2 supercharged was only ever used in Jaguar and Land Rover products. So you could technically say it's a Euro V8. But the Jaguar S-Type R is a car I've always wanted, and I chose it over an XFR because you can get an XFR for 30 grand and you get a very nice one for 30 grand. But there's something about finding, like, and the S-Type R is available all day long for like $12,000 to $25,000, and that's 150,000 miles to 50,000 miles. They're available. When I say all day long, I mean the prices are there, and they're not skyrocketing like other Jags, and they didn't hold their value. But I didn't want to choose it over the XF because the Jaguar S-Type is on the incredible Lincoln LS Jaguar S-Type Ford Thunderbird platform. I love this platform. The Lincoln LS is one of the best cars Lincoln has ever made. The engines are all great. They're all Ford. And the XF just has too much of the Indian influence that was taken over after Ford. And I'm much more comfortable owning something with more Ford related parts versus something with maybe Jaguar bespoke or Land Rover bespoke parts, because reliability, cost to repair, and things of that nature. But I love that 4.2 supercharged. It's factory. It has a beautiful whine. They make over 400, I think it's like 460 horsepower stock in the updated versions. And 0 to 60, you can get it into the 0 to 60, you can get it into the fours with just a pulley. Absolutely fabulous car. It's well under 30 grand, so it doesn't even technically qualify. But what I would do is if I really wanted one and had 30 grand, I'd wait for a mint, like 30,000 mile car, and spend the 25 to 30 grand on it and just keep it and love on it, because there's so few of them that have been kept nice. And I've never ever seen an an S-Type R in the wild. I've seen XJRs. I've driven an XFR Performance. There's what is it? The not the X-Type. The
F-Type?
What's it? F-Type. I see those all the time here in Austin, but I've never seen an S-Type R, and I think it's really cool. I love the styling. You either love or hate the styling. It's that weird retro modernism stuff. The interiors are comfortable. I've sat in one, but just an S-Type that was at a junkyard, and it feels fine enough. Right. But the S-Type R for me is, if you're an enthusiast, you'll understand why that's such a great buy, and why, like, you can't get a 450 horsepower plus supercharged V8 sedan really anywhere else for that kind of money. I can't think of one off the top of my head at all. Supercharged. Now you can get V8s up to that power for similar money, but it just, I don't know, it's not the same.
Right, and I think if you look at our choices for that, we both picked two pretty big sedans with V8s, which is pretty interesting for a sports car, because a lot of people will really just look for anything small, 6-cylinder, manual.
Supra
I mean, not for 30 grand, but yeah, it's just smaller cars that are more like handling oriented, which if you've seen any of our driving videos, I always harp on. I'm a handler over a power person. I just can't handle more power, and I'm just like, I would rather a car handle really, really well.
Well, you would want the S-Type in that regard, because you do better with an E55 or an M3 of that generation, because they didn't handle as well, but they handle well enough, and the platform is really good. And if you just get some great coilovers on it, the right tires, I know it's balanced well, and all day, every day, I'd go for that.
I mean, at the end of the day, that Jaguar just has enough Ford parts on it that you could replace them for cheap, and you don't really have to worry about the Jag parts as much. I feel like there's enough of them. The parts that are harder to find, I don't even know what would be hard to find on that car.
I mean, it would be trim, it would be Jaguar, right. Things like the keys and maybe the security system, but the overall nuts and bolts of it, the platform is Lincoln. Right. And the platform was shared between the S-Type, the Thunderbird, love it, and the Lincoln LS. And the Lincoln LS is an absolute hit. Like, I love the Lincoln LS. I want a Lincoln LS Sport really badly. But if I had the choice of the three, what I'd probably do is get a Thunderbird and put a S-Type motor in it. I'd really like that. But the S-Type is the only one that had that supercharged engine, and that engine was only in Range Rover, Land Rover, and Jaguar. So you have a bespoke engine. I mean, parts of it are bespoke. But the next, what do we say? The next category is luxury car. I'll go first on this one, because mine is, now just hang on. The last gen, 2017 and up, Lincoln Continental. It's beautiful. Now just hang on. The Lincoln Continental. Now, if I'm thinking luxury, all right, this is my thought process for luxury. I want to be comfortable, I want to be stylish, and I want to seem interesting. Those are my three criteria. When I'm seen in it, I want people to go, oh. Whenever I drive it, I want to go, And I just overall want it to be an ornament. And for this price range, and just for the conversation of it, the Lincoln Continental, when they brought the name back, and this is probably a stupid choice, but I've always wanted one. I love the interiors on these. I remember when it came out, I lost my mind when they were bringing back the Continental name. You can't get a black label twin turbo for this. You're going with like the Select or the Premium or whatever, the sort of base to mid trims. But standard equipment, they have the amazing multi-contour seats. They're beautiful to look at. I love the rear end. I love how they took the chrome under the doors and did the door handles like in the original Continentals. And this Continental, actually, they made coach doors. They made a coach door Continental. Now that's like several $100,000 still. You won't find that. But you can get the right exterior and interior colors. They do a beautiful light blue. The engine choices are good. It is front wheel drive. But if we're talking luxury, I shouldn't care about where the wheels are being driven. So I really, really want, and it's just interesting. It's a left field choice. It's not an S-Class. It's not a 7 Series. It's different. It's full size. It's American. I love American luxury. I think American luxury is one of the most incredible phenomena on this earth, specifically when we started doing luxury post-war. Opulence, glitz, glamour, excess. And I drive a German luxury car, so I appreciate the other aspect of that. But I don't know, the Lincoln Continental, I think for 30 grand, you find a really nice one, and I think you'd be more than satisfied.
So, I mean, it's really interesting to hear that choice, especially from an S-Class owner. And the reason why I say that is because I know he's got a big affinity with American cars. You'll see most of his list has that, at least that influence in it. And like I said, I was trying to avoid European cars, but when you think luxury, you're thinking Rolls, Maybach, Bentley, and to be in that price range, you're looking at cars that are 40 years old. You're looking at all those old
The silver
Bentleys and whatnot.
Syrah, the Bentley Turbo R. Well, you can't get a Turbo
Yeah,
R.
ones that are, I mean, luxury-wise, they're not nearly as good as cars today. And so that's why the car that I picked was a W222 S-Class. You're able to find these pretty commonly for under 30K. And when I was going through a lot of lists, I was able to find a C63 for just under
S63.
3. Sorry?
S63.
I was able to find a 63 AMG for just under 30 grand with actually a really decent mileage. I believe it was 75,000 miles. So the fact that you could buy a less than 10-year-old S-Class for probably a third of its cost when it was new, and AMG at that, this is the generation right after the goopy eyes, and the S-Class had a little rough patch from the early 2000s.
We call these the pontoon
Right.
S-Classes because they have those crazy fenders.
Yeah.
And this is quite possibly, besides the W126, which is what I drive, the W222 is heralded as one of the most reliable S-Classes. Unless you get like the V12, like Airmatic or crazy fluid suspension, you get one that's really optioned out with a lot of stuff. Yes, that stuff's going to break, but the W222 as a platform is from what I understand still pretty reliable, and they hold their value over the W220, the goopy eyes.
Yeah.
They hold their value over that, and I think they hold their value because they don't hold their value. I shouldn't say that, because a similar vintage Camry, percentage-wise, holds more of its value.
Right.
But I love the W222. And it's in my mind, of course, if I was thinking rationally about it, I'd look up S-Classes.
Yeah. You immediately go to S-Class.
You go to S-Class because it is the best of everything. But I think maybe I'm just trying to be...
But it's like, so when you were talking about like with American luxury and how we're all about glitz and glamour, Germans are very efficient. They're very like, This is what we want. This is what we need. How can we make that faster? And I think that's one of the better things about like rich people is they love convenience. They love saving as much time as possible, whatever they can so that they don't have to do this thing more than once. And that's what's so great about S-Classes in general, is that there's so many convenience features on them. Like with, I'm going to forget the name. The S-Class from the 90s, the after years, the 140.
The W140.
So with the 140, you had for the rear headrests, you could drop those down.
They invented
For
soft close on
soft
that car.
close, and like so you don't have to close the door twice.
They had an electronically adjustable rear view mirror.
There's so many things redundant on German cars, especially, that makes it so much more convenient for people to not have to do things twice. And I think that's like pinnacle luxury for me. It's like, I hate wasting time on things, and if I can just not do it again, like automatic wipers. I know that wasn't invented by anyone German, but the fact that it was pretty standard quickly on a lot of German cars and European cars in general, it's just something that luxury will always have convenience tied with it. And I think that's what makes the S-Class so consistently, the number one name when it comes to luxury. Obviously, besides like opulent luxury, when you think of Rolls Royce and whatnot, like if you're just thinking luxury right off the bat, you're like, oh, I need to get an S-Class. And I mean, that's...
Well, the S-Class is the business jet, and you buy a business jet because you need to travel and you need to get somewhere. You don't want to deal with the airport. But an American approach to that is you're going to the airport, but you're buying a first-class seat. So you're not, maybe it is a affluence thing. I don't know. The Continental for me just, and I'm just nostalgic towards that. And they brought back the Continental name, and the car was an absolute flop. And that makes me sad, but it was a flop because it was a big sedan. Big sedans are out unless you're a German. It was front wheel drive, which was stupid. They shouldn't have done that. That's one thing I don't like about it. But if I take that out and I'm thinking luxury, I don't know, the Continental it's an interesting choice. And I think luxury, for something to be luxurious, it needs to be interesting. And I respect and I love the S-Class. Again, I drive one. An old one, but I do drive one. It's not interesting.
Well, that one's not. I feel like the W, especially if I'm getting a 63.
No, but yeah, it's not that it's not. I mean, it's not. But yeah, but it's when you hear S63, you think, oh yeah, it's gonna be a fast Benz. I'm not. It's not. I'm never surprised. I'm never like, ooh, oh. I'm never like taken aback or flabbergasted by it. I appreciate it and I love it, and I probably will own one day because I do like it. But if I'm thinking out of these categories, I think the Continental is just a dumb choice, and that's what makes it luxurious, is because you make a dumb choice because you like it and you want to, versus considering convenience and pragmatic thoughts.
Right. I mean, that's the American way to approach luxury too. You just throw money to solve the problem.
Money. So, what's the next one? Practical family car.
Well, it's practical / family car. So this category is more of just like, again, the more realistic, like, I've got responsibilities. I'm an adult. I've got 30 grand I'm throwing on a car. What am I getting? For us, we're still a little ways off from thinking about families and whatnot, but it is still something to consider, because like if we're carrying stuff around, needing to tow, moving apartments, that's something that's pretty common. These cars still have a good place in enthusiasts' hearts. And of course, I had to pick a wagon. That's the number one thing that came to my head. And again, thinking of a practical car, you think of reliability. And when it comes to practical reliability, Volvo. Volvo is safety oriented. They're never the most interesting car. And this is the only car I think on my list that is an car. It's a traffic car, 100% through and through. But with the option that I picked, I think it's the most car enthusiast oriented, because it's got a 300 horsepower inline four. I mean, it's turboed, yeah, but that's a little the GR Corolla. The GR Corolla's got that's a 3-cylinder, isn't it?
The GR Corolla, no, you're thinking of the Yaris. The Yaris is a 3-cylinder. The Corolla's a 4.
So you've got the GR Corolla, which has got an inline 4 with 300 horsepower as well. And I mean, it's not the same engine, nor is it tuned the same. But in a Volvo wagon, I mean, that's pretty fast. And so I chose the V60 R Design. Obviously, R Design is the more sporty looking. I think it's mostly just an appearance package. I'm sure there's a couple other things. But it's got freaking quad exhaust. You get quad tip exhaust on a Volvo wagon of all cars. Now, granted, I think that's only the 2019 plus ones, and those are still way over 30,000. But you can find like a 20. Right before that, the 2015 to 2018s, those ones are well under 30,000. You've got a lot of safety features. You've got all the technology safety like adaptive cruise, lane keep, all that stuff that's standard nowadays. That car is super, super reliable, and you've got a lot of space. There's just not many wagons left in this country. And I was really looking for any sort of Audi wagon because, they do it really well. And that's the more logical choice of what people would go for. But there's none, not at least around the 30,000 mark. I mean, you can buy a RS4 Avant not an RS4 Avant, an S4 Avant? Because we didn't get the RS4.
No, S4.
I mean, you can get Avants from Audi, the A4s, but those are only the 2-liter inline fours, so those are pretty boring. And I think that's why the Volvo is a super solid choice. It's the choice, I think, when it comes to at least wagons.
Well, I'm changing my answer, I think, because
you're suspicious.
Because I went family car route. Okay, look,
R63 wagon.
Let me tell you. I didn't even think of that. God, that would be actually really good. All right, well then I'll split it into two answers because I get two. So if I'm going family car, my mother, and this is why Chrysler is my most favorite car company in the world ever, even though they make nothing now. My mother always had a Town and Country. Before that, she had a Caravan, which was a Town and Country, just the cheaper version. And I remember when she bought new a 2013 nearly baby blue on beige leather Town and Country, brand new, didn't tell me. I was so excited about it. It had DVD and lights in the roof, and it had the Pentastar 3.6 V6, which I know everyone is like an awful engine, but it has a great induction noise. It was the most powerful, excuse me, you'll have to cut that. It was the most powerful minivan on sale at the time. 0 to 60 in like low 8s, high 7s in a minivan. I loved it. And Chrysler is, if you're going to get a minivan, go Chrysler. And I chose for family. Now I'm going family. It is practical, but you mentioned something about towing, and these can't really tow. They can tow a little bit, but they can't tow like an SUV. But I chose the Chrysler Pacifica, the facelifted version. I think the Pacifica started in 16 or 17. 17, the Pacifica. They dropped the Town and Country name and brought the Pacifica name back.
Well, because the Pacifica used to be that weird crossover thing.
Pacifica was that weird wagony crossover thing, which actually was a really great car.
I had a friend who had
It was a
that.
really good car.
It was the blue color.
Yeah.
Kind of like blue steel. It was a cool car. I really liked it.
The Pacifica was a great car, and it didn't sell well, and it should have. But it was like a mix between. It was like a two-row version of a Q7. It was like not an SUV, but not a wagon.
Yeah, just like an
It was kind of like that. Yeah. But I chose Pacifica because I got to drive one when they first came out. I absolutely love it. Chrysler does the best minivans. If you have a family, get over the notion of minivan. Ooh, poor me. You cannot beat the interior space of a minivan. You can't beat the practicality of a minivan, and you can't beat the comfort of a minivan. The next thing you could do is get a conversion van, or people what they end up doing is getting Suburbans or Expeditions, but they're not as comfortable, they're not as fuel efficient, and they're not as spacious. But the minivan, specifically, you get the stow and go option where the seats go into the floor and into the trunk. You have a van. My mother and I use that all the time to carry stuff. It turns into a panel van, basically. But if you had a family and you had to take care of a family, minivan all the way. I'm a family of 6. I have 3 siblings, and we put 100,000 miles on that car in 3 years. Like, absolutely love it. Now, if I'm going practical, then, and this was my choice at first, it's going to be the last generation X5. No, 2 generations ago. I don't know the body. We'll put it up here,
E59.
but they still look modern.
Yeah.
They have a tailgate.
The clamshell one?
Mm-hmm. A little tailgate, but they do have a tailgate. And I got to drive an M Sport. I wouldn't get the M Sport if you had a family because those tires on the back are basically square. They're like 275, if not.
Probably 315.
They're huge.
Absolutely huge.
So, I mean, if you're putting a lot of mileage on it, you just wouldn't get that out of
Plus
practicality's
M-Sport
sake.
suspension.
But they have great engines. That's a era of BMW with great engines. The interior's great.
Well, not the V8, but yeah.
The build quality's great, right?
Yeah.
You get the 35.
Yeah, the N52 or M52.
But they're still modern looking. I got to drive one. They're quick and they can tow. And the reason I'd get that over the M Class or by that point the GLE is I think the BMW is better looking. And the M Class has an older style interior. I like the BMW. Now, if I was going practical, I'd do that. But if I had a family, the third row in that BMW is pointless. Yeah. Same with the XC90, same with the M Class. The only third rows that are good are in the minivans and the extended SUVs. And you cannot get a nice low mileage Suburban, not the Yukon, the Suburban, for the same price you can get a Chrysler Pacifica. And a Pacifica, you get DVD, you get sliding doors, you get all this stuff. So it's like, I have like a 2-parter answer for that. But if I was family, it'd be the Pacifica. If it was practicality, it would be the BMW all-wheel drive, because I'd want to tow.
Right. I mean, both of us picked and cars for the first part of that answer.
Yeah,
it's
a minivan. You can't really. There's no exciting. But you don't buy a minivan for that. If you have a family, get over that and get a minivan. You will thank me because my mother had one for all of my childhood, and it was the best thing ever, and it was perfect for her as a parent. And it was practical enough. She didn't need to go off-road. She didn't need a tow. We had a truck for that. So if you're just doing family needs, get a minivan. Buy the minivan. The minivans are dying. They're going out of fashion, and they're the best family car ever. And people aren't buying them because they want an SUV, and they want to look cool in a Suburban or a Yukon or an Expedition or something.
You think we're going to be looking back on minivans like we do the Woody and all that, like the panel vans and stuff?
I think eventually, because I don't know that the minivan will ever completely go away, because I just don't think it will.
It's too practical for
It's too useful. It's too useful to go away. Versus like the coupe utility or the sedan utility, like the Ranchero or whatever, like the Utes. Those went away because you only had 2 seats and a bed. Well, people would just end up getting a truck that was more practical for probably the same price, or they just would get a truck. Now that went away because its usefulness wasn't there. The minivan, I don't think will ever die. Not completely. Because someone's going to come out with an electric minivan and families are going to lose their minds.
Like the ID Buzz.
That's not coming to the States.
Yeah, it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not there for $30,000, but
No,
they're like probably 45.
But and Chrysler's coming out with, they had that airflow concept.
Oh, true. Yeah.
They're going to come out that platform whenever they decide to. They may go bust before now and then. If Chrysler goes bust, that'll be the biggest loss in the American car industry since Pontiac.
Like Hummer.
Hummer's back.
Well, but it's GMC.
Yeah,
it's
but
not,
Hummer's back.
That's like, I mean.
But there's no Pontiac.
Yeah.
If Chrysler were to go.
Poor Saturn.
That was, y'all know why Saturn went away?
That's another podcast.
Well, fine. But I know why Saturn went away, and it was because of GM infighting, and Saturn was the best thing that ever happened at General Motors in the, 20th century? End of the 20th century. Best thing that ever happened to them. Stupid of them. It was their Scion. Stupid of them to get rid of it.
Well, look, we're talking about practical cars, and we're going the absolute opposite route for the next one. We're talking about most modifiable cars. And for this one, I decided to go with one that was very cheap so that you could add up to $30,000. But this time I'll let you go first, because I'm curious. Obviously you're a little biased, but it's okay.
I hate to be a VQ boy, but I am now, not by choice. I do own recently a 2005 G35X all-wheel drive, love it. But I put Infiniti G35, so that could be the coupe, the 4-door, or the all-wheel drive. I didn't put 370Z because I have some couth about me, and I think it's worth paying for. You're getting the same platform. You're getting the 370Z platform and engine. You just have a nicer car, period. So I put the G35 because you can pick them up all day long. They're cheap as hell. And is this something I would own? I do, but would I ever, when I get rid of this G35, will I ever get another one? Probably not. But I will say that engine is intoxicating. It is great. You do not get tired of the induction.
I'm straight edge.
He's just started drinking alcohol, and he thinks he's like some crazy. The G35, the modding community, it's all, you can use it all, because whether it's the 370s or 350Z rather, or the G35 coupe, it all works. Now with the all-wheel drive, you have some complications, but the modding community is enormous, and the engine is great, and the platform is the Nissan Skyline. It's a great platform. It's a great handling car. I drove it today on beautiful driving roads. It drives fantastic, handles great. Unfortunately, Donovan's going to say it's an car and looks like traffic, and you could get the 350 if you didn't want that, but I still think they're interesting to look at. I like them. They're simple, they're clean. Versus when Infiniti got all bubbly and goopy and droopy, and this was before that. Right. But that's my pick. The G35, I think it's a great platform. I own one, so I know it's a fantastic starting point. Much better starting point than your option.
Well, before I get to mine, I was going to say, you can pick up a G35 for $5,000 to $10,000. on Facebook literally multiple points of the day.
Right now.
And
Yeah.
you're spending
Mine's for sale if anyone wants it. 5.
literally, if you're spending $20 to $25,000 on mods for a car, you better damn well hope that what you spent makes it a good car.
Air ride, twin turbo kit.
You might as well just make a fucking R35 Skyline at that point, just a mini Skyline.
Exactly, but you're not paying Skyline prices.
Right,
It's
right.
great. It's got exhaust, tune the engine, twin turbo kit, bag it. Like if you're going that route, it's a fantastic. I just hit my lapel mic. It's a fantastic platform to start with.
Yeah, I mean,
Your platform is good too, but it's a terrible choice.
but remember, I'm saying this is like a car enthusiast thing. It's like I don't ever hear really people that, besides the G35, saying that Infiniti has anything else really car enthusiast. Mainly because if you look at like the modern stuff with the Q60 and the Q50, they look cool, but they're just very limited. They're very, they're just really traffic-y looking. And again, like he said, I do think his generation's pretty traffic-y looking, but it's just so overplayed. It's just so overplayed. I just like...
It's overplayed, but you picked an S63, an E90. Those are overplayed.
I disagree.
G35. No, what's overplayed is the 350. How many G35Xs have you seen since you've seen mine?
I mean, I can only see G35s. I don't really tell fast enough if they're X's or not. Because
There's a lot of them, but there's a lot of them.
I will say there's much less sedans.
Ease of modification is there.
Minus the all-wheel drive, just because it's a little bit more complicated.
A little more complicated, a little more maintenance intensive, and you'd probably be better with the rear-wheel drive because it's lighter, but I like having all-wheel drive.
And the transmission is really, really limiting. Automatics.
That 5-speed is not great. If you could get a manual, get a manual, but the 5-speed isn't great.
No, not for the more car enthusiast route. But if you're spending $30,000, you're gonna manual swap it anyways, or put something better.
And you could manual swap it with that budget. You could find a beautiful G35 sedan or coupe and say it was everything you wanted, but it didn't have. You can manual swap it.
Right.
Probably
going for the generation right after his with the what's it called, the high rev.
The VQ the VQ high rev with the dual intakes. It revs almost 1,000 RPM more, maybe 500 RPM more, and more power. You could go for that, but it's only 1 year.
Oh, really?
And then they did
before the
next
next
generation? Did the
generation?
3.7, I think.
Oh, I see.
I think it's only
True.
1 year.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
And I don't like that body style at all. Yeah. I mean, but the VQ is fine enough. And on the VQ, you can do it on both, but on the VQ, you can put a GTR intake plenum. I think you have to have the high rev because it has 2 throttle bodies, but that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's a super moddable car. I just, I think, I just wish there was something more unique about it, about the platform. Like all VQ and Infiniti, I'll just say all VQ owners are like, oh, dude, I'm basically a Skyline.
Well, now the G35 is exactly the Skyline.
It was sold as a Skyline.
It was sold as. I mean, the G35 is a Nissan Skyline.
I agree. It's just that it's the most traffic Skyline because you compare it with any of the other ones, and it's like they're just all held. Even the R32 even the one right before that, the R31, they're all held in such high esteem because they've got the RB engines versus the VQs, and just because it's got the drivetrain, it's not really a Skyline anymore. So I don't know. I digress.
Let's go on to your terrible
on the total
decision.
opposite side.
This makes no sense to me.
So I chose a Gen 1 Mini Cooper S. A Gen 1 Mini Cooper S because it's the only one with a supercharger. After that, they went to turbocharging. And it's a very British thing to do. And once they got bought by BMW, they got switched over to turbos because they just ended up using BMW engines.
Well, because it was Rover, and then Rover got bought by BMW.
And, granted, Mini's in a much, much better place than it is today. But that first generation with the rebirth of the Mini, well, I mean, Mini was the name of it before, but of the Mini Cooper. The Mini Cooper coming back with Italian Job and all those other movies where they had the Gen 1 Mini. I mean, that thing's freaking sick. And, you can buy those first gen S's for well under 10 grand. And you throw $20,000 worth of mods on it. I mean, you're not doing much to the engine because I would just, put a little pulley on it, probably forge up the internals so it can handle a little bit more power. But throw the rest of that into handling mods, a really, really good set of tires. And I mean, you've got a freaking scorcher. Recently, there was a video from Alex, Auto Alex, the host from Car Throttle. They were doing a $1,500 car challenge, or sorry, 1,500-pound car challenge. And Taylor had it was the 4-door version, but it was a supercharged one. And the whine on that thing, I mean, it's freaking sick. And I think if you're buying it like a car enthusiast, very modifiable car, I don't think you could go wrong with that Mini Cooper. And again, it meets all the criteria. It's unique. I would say it's definitely not a traffic car. At least the S isn't, especially with the noises that it makes. And I think that's what makes it the perfect candidate for this. It's not 30,000 exactly, and that's what I said at the beginning of this category. It had to be a little bit less so you could kind of modify it up to $30,000. And I would be hard pressed to find a better car. Like Miata would be the next choice. You can spend $30,000 on that all day with a wide body and all that.
Is the first gen Mini not grossly unreliable?
I mean, that's a 1.6. I
Isn't
forgot
it
what
just
the engine's based
absolutely
off
terrible?
Of. It probably is, but if I've got $30,000 to spend in maintenance and mods, I'll probably split that in half. But like I said, I'd be forging up the internals. I'd be making that engine as reliable.
Which, if you could make it like reliable.
I mean, you throw $20,000 at anything.
If you could, then fine. But I also think they're ugly as hell. The first gen.
I guess, but sometimes ugly is what makes it interesting.
What about if something is boring, like the G35? That's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, you talked about we said at the beginning that the Phaeton didn't really count because that was also boring. So I don't know. Those two probably are our most controversial takes because one's overrated and mine's
the first gen
underrated.
Mini. I'm looking at this transmission issues. I think that was the main thing, was the transmission. Although the first gen Mini base had that CVT, which I believe
CVT.
CVT.
Oh, I said CBT. I was like, okay.
No, CVT. It has a failure rate of 100%.
Oh.
They all fail.
It's
Now,
just
the
a
S,
matter of
the
time.
S doesn't have a CVT.
Right. You couldn't get it.
I've ridden in a supercharged S.
Yeah.
Friend in high school, he had one that had a muffler delete, and the muffler, like the exhaust came out right under the rear seats. I was in the rear seats. He had it lowered, so it drove like this, and it was like it made me sick. Like it made me like nauseous being in it. Although I think eventually he put a sequential in it, and it was a really cool car. It was quick, but I hated riding in it. God, I hated riding in it.
Well, my other choice, the original choice I was going for, was I think just as overrated as yours was, and it's a first gen GT86. But you see why I switched to the Mini Cooper.
I would have a Mini Cooper.
Because if, again, you could probably find a very first year Scion or Subaru, any of the three, any of the triplets, you could probably find that with, I'm trying to keep it under 100,000 miles. You could probably find that for around $15,000, probably a little less, depending on how well you want it to look. Throw in like another engine, and that's it. Just that with a new set of tires, and you're probably good.
I mean, it's a great platform. It's
so balanced.
It's just a Miata that isn't a Miata. It's a great car.
It's so underpowered, and
It's so underpowered.
That's why
and
you
I'm
get rid of
so
them.
sick of seeing them now. If you could put like a crate engine in there,
I would want to do
or
something really cool.
if you could do that, then yes. Or I'd love to see one with a straight six.
Well, what's funny is you mentioned that. I was talking about that with one of my buddies who had to buy a GR86 because his car got wrecked. I was like, dude, what if they put the B58 in that thing? Because you've already got, I mean, do they have a, I guess it's called the GR86, but do they have like a top end trim for the GR86?
Because that's Scion, right?
No,
the
that's
Scion
Toyota.
FRS. Well,
Right.
when they're all
that was
one trim,
the
and then
yellow
there were
spec.
options. Then there were options
Right.
because it was a Toyota platform, and then it came out with like Scion, debuting with Scion, and Scion didn't have trims. Scion just had options. Like I had a Scion TC, and you could get like wheels, spoiler, head unit, and fog lights, and then it was all just accessories. So I don't think they ever. Now the modern ones, maybe I'm sure they do, but didn't they also come out with a turbo?
No.
Hasn't
It's
come
still
out yet?
it's basically I think a same engine just revised. So the reason why I said that is because like I mentioned, the GR Corolla, GR Yaris across the seas, the GR Supra, they need to have like a special edition of the GR86, and I know maybe just take off the turbo. The B58 from from BMW side of things, I mean, with the turbo makes 385 horsepower. Take off that turbo and you put it right at 300. That's a freaking
A
awesome.
naturally aspirated straight six.
That's an E46. That's a Toyota E46 right
That would
there.
be really great.
Again, that's not a $30,000. I mean, that's
No,
more than 30,000.
that yeah.
But let's say you take everything.
But you
to
could
last
throw in
gen-
like an LS2.
yeah, there's plenty of those.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen a few swaps of that. You had the GT4586. But I would say take everything a generation back. You stick with the GT86, and you could put an N55 BMW engine in there. That would be pretty cool. Because I've seen old Camaros using the dual clutch and sometimes even the S55 engine. You throw that in a GT86, and you would be well pressed, well received for $30,000. So I don't know. I think, like I said, I would stick with the Mini just because if I've got $30,000, I've got a really cool, small little car.
you could really make it your own, and you
Yeah.
don't see a lot of them.
And like I almost wanted to go with the Fiat, but then I was like, that's even more unreliable. Like with the Abarth engine's better, but it's still a Fiat Chrysler product. It's brutally unreliable, and it's such a phenomenally sounding car without that muffler. Like there's like 2 or 3 in these complexes across from us, and they just sound so freaking cool. And like especially like watching the straight pipes when they did their Fiesta versus the Abarth, I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like, and I think they spent just under $30,000 too.
Well, a Fiesta ST would have been good on this.
That would have also been very good. But
Or a Focus ST and bring it up, and you could get it above an RS with that much money.
true, like a first gen, and then like make it look like because we didn't get the first gen RS here. That would be
Ooh, that'd be great. Oh, let's go back. Go back. I want to change it. We missed that. Well, let's move on to our last one, which is all rounder. Now, we have two.
I would love to see these go up in a battle.
Yeah. Well, mine is just cool.
No, mine is cool.
Okay. Well, okay. What's yours?
Mine's the best all rounder.
What's yours? What is it?
My best all-rounder is a Porsche Panamera the very first year. Well, that's the all-rounder to choose for because if you take all of these categories that we did, you've got a sports car for the weekend, you've got a luxury car all-round because it's Porsche, you've got so many freaking options to choose from, you've got a practical car, not a family car because it's 4-seater, so I mean you can only have 2 kids, but it's practical.
Are you doing the Panamera S?
It doesn't matter as long as it's under $30,000. You could probably find anything.
Because you might end up with the V6 for that.
Maybe.
Well,
but
you could find an S for that, but it'd be high mileage.
I would say like right now, if I'll post one right here. If I find one that's an S under 100,000 miles, clean title.
He says didn't find one.
Cut that out, editor. Cut that out. If I'm able to find one with an S trim, I think that would be the perfect all rounder.
I'll tell you why it's not.
Oh, because yours is that much better.
No, hang on. If we're talking all rounder, we're considering repairs.
True.
We're considering repairs, and that platform is shared with Bentley, by the way. The first gen Panamera is based on the Phaeton. When we go back to the Phaeton platform was modified for the Panamera as well as it was modified for the Bentley. So I wouldn't choose that because of the repairs.
Well, look.
The repairs would be insane on that.
Your third, this last car is your third and car. So you've already messed up 3 times or 2 times.
No, I'm happy about it. It's beautiful. It's
There's
a gorgeous
literally-
car.
One of these cars is downstairs. It's black.
It's probably not this one because this one's rare.
It looks like it.
Okay, I chose 2017 Plus last last model of the Ford Fusion, the V6 Sport. I remember when this came out, the V6 Sport with the adaptive suspension. So let me talk you through what you get with this. You get I believe you get Apple CarPlay in all of them. So you're not getting it at Panamera with Apple CarPlay for $30,000. No, you're not. I can guarantee you're not. You have a beautiful looking car, and it was the Mondeo in Europe, and it's a great platform, great handling car. It's the Mondeo. Europe loved it. It won awards in Europe, and in Europe it came in a wagon. We didn't get it here.
Sport brake.
You can't get a sport brake for $30,000. Too new.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you still have that option. If your grandma gave you $10,000 extra dollars.
And in this, you get the 2.7 liter twin turbo EcoBoost V6, which is like 325 or 330 horsepower. Wicked. They're all wheel drive. I'm talking about the V6 Sport. Quad exhausts. And the adaptive suspension with pothole mitigation. So it sucks, if it senses a pothole, it sucks the wheel up so it doesn't go into the pothole. That's the first car ever to feature that, anything like that. That all-rounder, it's fast, it's comfortable, it's reliable, and it's great looking. The Fusion is possibly the last really good looking American sedan, because there's no American sedans left actually. They discontinued it. But if you can find a Fusion V6 Sport.
What about the Cadillac ATS and CTS?
But I'm not considering, I'm talking like family midsize. Like the Cadillacs, I wouldn't, because then you're comparing them to BMW 3 Series and stuff like that. I'm talking like this class, like the Americana sedan, which is your 4-door front-wheel drive. This one's all-wheel drive. Twin turbo V6, a bastard of an engine, so fast. And you get all the modern stuff too. You get Apple CarPlay, you get backup cameras, you get all the modern suspension stuff, and there's not going to be any more. Like, you get it now or you don't. Like, when that car came out, I was so jealous I wasn't old enough or rich enough to have one myself, because I was still in high school. And I absolutely love the V6 Sport Fusion. It was their last hurrah. It's the Ford Mondeo in Europe. The platform's great. It handles great. It's still modern looking. You can get a 2017 and it still looks brand new. Like, it's great. I love it. I like the Panamera. Right. But if I'm going all-rounder, the Panamera is not as good an all-rounder as the Ford Fusion. Sure, the Panamera can haul more.
Well, like, if you were scoring these, like, based on points, right? Like, they have to fit each category. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like mine's more all-rounder.
I mean, just because it's like wagon.
Yours just scores higher in practical. What mods can you add to that car?
You could boost it, I'm sure, up to 400 horsepower. And pothole mitigation. Yeah. That is a cool...
Right, that's a really cool... Like, that's a big luxury thing. I mean, I would just say the technology is... I mean, for a Ford, you know, like, especially putting it on that and not like a Continental or something like that.
I don't know if any other cars have used that. It's an expensive system.
I feel like we would have seen that, you know, like, especially with like that Sony suspension that they showed on the
Bose suspension that actually made it into trucker seats.
Makes sense.
They used it for seats in big rigs.
Truckers get everything good. I mean, they were like,
that Bose suspension is. I mean, I guess Mercedes kind of brought it back with their and Cadillac has their Magna Ride, but that Bose suspension.
But that thing was 20 years ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. Like, yeah. Well, what do y'all think of our choices? I'm pretty happy with them. They couldn't be more different. I was surprised by how different these were. I see how mine fall a little bit. I see how his fall. I didn't go American to be American. It's just sort of how it landed.
I mean, we're obviously biased. That's the whole point of these lists, is that, like, I'm a very European guy. You're a very American guy. I mean, you're literally... The only one that wasn't American was Infiniti.
And the Jag.
That's an American engine.
American platform, European engine.
It's still mostly American. And I mean, like I said...
Well, your Volvo V60, what year would that be? Because Ford owned Volvo.
16 to 19. I think that's Ford didn't know. That's when Tata picked it up. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was trying to go outside of European. That's just where I ended up landing. Just like him with American cars. That's what we really like. If we had 5 cars to pick from and it was a 5-car garage, I think that's a really, really good choice, especially for $30,000. I mean, all these cars offer super, super bang for buck. I could not be happier with any of these, even on your list. I mean, like you said, $30,000 is a lot for a car still today.
Yeah, that still
years
gets you a
ago,
good.
20 years ago, $30,000 was buying you a very, very high-end car right before recession or the dot-com bubble. That would be right after the dot-com bubble. And $30,000
Buy you
is a lot
good
of
stuff.
money. I'm curious. I'll put here what it was after inflation. My guess would be probably like $60,000 in today's
30,000 10 years ago.
right? No, I said 20.
Oh, 20 years
So
ago.
2003, right after the dot-com
it was
bubble.
probably like a 50 or 60,000. I'm trying to think of what a $30,000 car would have been. Maybe like a low end Lincoln.
Yeah, I mean, I said $60,000 in today's money.
That sounds about right. Overall, a really interesting list. Interesting to see how we thought about this differently, but super fun. It's a fun thing to talk about, thinking about what if I had this, what would I do? If I won the lottery, what would I buy? Really interesting. We're really glad y'all could hang around and listen to us talk about it, even though you know who was correct most of the time. But really, really fun stuff.
I'd be curious to hear y'all's thoughts. I love having this discussion because it's the same. It's as ubiquitous as the whole, what would you buy if you won the lottery? This is like the conversation to have if you're a car enthusiast. It's like, all right, you got $30,000. What are you buying? So with all that being said, thank you all for watching. Thank you for staying till the end. We really appreciate you watching and supporting us. If there's anything else you would like to hear us talk about and dissent on, leave those comments down below. In the meantime, go watch some of our other videos and reviews. And until next time, as always, thanks for watching.